Hi everyone, my name is Diya, and I have a confession to make. I did something that I may or may not regret, and it happened when I was in 7th grade. It was after school. My twin sister and I had just come home. Now, earlier in the week at school, my sister and I had both run for the same elected student council position at our school. And on that very day, she had received the position instead of me. And so when we went home, without her knowing, I went straight to her bed and I poured water all over it. Now, 7th grade me thought this was a heinous crime, something that my parents would quite literally send me to jail for, and the reason that they or my sister never found out was because immediately after, I dried it all up with paper towels. But what drove me to act this way? Sure, it was anger, a temper, but foremost, anxiety. Comparison, to be specific. It was the magnitude of ways in which we'd been pitted against each other. On paper, but in my mind was where it affected me most. Why do I compare myself to others? Why don't I feel happy when I do? What was wrong with me? And there it is. That was exactly what happened that day in our room. So it all starts with a little something called insecurity. Now, everyone in this room knows what this is, as everyone in this room has had it through some point in their lives, but for a purpose of understanding, I'll define it. It's the uncertainty or anxiety about oneself, a lack of confidence. It's the feeling of not being good enough. So, to put it into perspective, imagine yourself on a luxurious cruise ship, but you have a fear of the ocean. You're not equipped to be on that ship. Can you enjoy it at all? Do you feel safe, secure, confident? How I felt in my situation that I described to you was the opposite of those three words. My cruise ship, the situation I should have been able to enjoy, was my sister's win. The moment she came running to me, smiled, thrilled that she had won. I should have been happy for her. But my fear of the ocean, or in this case, my insecurity, prevented me from feeling safe, secure, or confident. Growing up with a twin sister meant that insecurity would constantly be catching me. Other people, they seemed to think that my sister and I were two carbon copies of the same person, and well, judging by this picture up here, I can kind of see why. Yet, even with that, it always felt like they were deeming one of us better than the other. When relatives and distant family members saw us again after seeing us when we were babies, they would stand us side by side and point out all of our differences. Your sister is taller, her teeth are straighter, but you have your mom's nose. Thank you? I didn't really get it. My parents also had unintentionally contributed to these comparisons. Now, I'm not going to rip them apart, as they are sitting in the audience today and are still my parents. But growing up, I always considered myself the more difficult child out of the two of us. Things were always a little bit harder with me. And when disciplining me or trying to explain something, they would often bring up my significantly more well-behaved sister and provide her as an example for me to follow. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my parents so much, and they've always affirmed that my sister and I are our own people, free to make our own choices. Yet, when the two of us were compared in those disciplinary situations, I couldn't help feeling like instead of trying to fit better into my own shoes, another pair of a completely different size was thrown at me. These examples that I've provided you so far have just been some that I've gone through in my personal experience being a twin. Of course, these struggles and insecurities can be found in way more places than just a sibling relationship. For example, being someone part of the minority in a predominantly white school. Yes, I have felt singled out. And so many more people in this room can relate to this, but as a teen, being in the age where material possessions and social status are superior, I'm always asking my parents for the trendiest new jacket or shoes, and sometimes I look at girls I don't even know and I just think, I would do anything to be you, even if it's just for a day. That's how any of us feel in situations like these. To become the majority, or to become what is liked. Going off of that theme of superiority, I found that the word better is objective. It's an opinion. Everyone has their own perception of the word when it applies in different scenarios. My sister winning the election was proof that she was better than me, and well, that was a fact. She got the most votes, meaning that people liked her speech the most. I realized I needed to try my hardest to become better and take her example. And just like that, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed a new personality. Now, if you're a teen or you've been around a Gen Z person before, you might have heard the term glow up. Parents in the audience, maybe you've helped your child give their room a glow up, which basically just means getting them a new rug and helping them take down the princess posters from when they were 5, but you get the idea. It's a makeover, giving something new qualities, or just sprucing it up even just a little bit. I wanted to give my personality a glow up. And well, my sister was the blueprint. If it worked for her, why shouldn't it work for me? And studies from UC Davis show that by making these changes, they can result in success and changes in policy and effect. I wanted all of that for myself. And so, well, my sister doesn't know about this. When I think about it, there's a lot of things she's finding out tonight. But I observed her behavior for a week, and I acted with her personality for a week, and I made this graph of my approximations. I wrote it down in one of my journals and turned it into a graph. So we have 3 different categories here. First one is the friends that I talk to. My personality is in the blue, my sister's is in the red. On average in a day, I talk to about 5 friends. When I acted with my sister's personality, I talked to 8 friends. Second category, how long I talk to my parents. On average in a day, I talk to them for about 60 minutes, an hour. With my sister's personality, I talk to them for an hour and a half, 90 minutes. And the last category, the marks I received in school, in a week on average, I received a 92. With my sister's personality, I received a 94. So from what we're looking at here, my life was going great. I was succeeding, as trustee UC Davis said. There was nothing going wrong. But there's always a but. There was still something wrong. This way I was acting, it wasn't me. Even though I looked different on the outside, even though I acted different on the outside and it looked different to other people, I was still the same person on the inside. Nothing had changed. And this way I was acting, it led to even more doubts and insecurities. Well, if these results were what I'm getting with my sister's personality, does that mean that she's actually better than me in more aspects than just the election? Is there actually something wrong with me? I needed to know why, and I really hoped it wasn't true. I was tired of acting like my sister, and I wanted to give being myself another shot. But I knew I had to do it differently this time. I had to understand why I felt the way I did when I lost the election to her, and why it led to me having my anxious spurt. And so, let me tell you the 2 things that I learned about a post-rejection mindset. I have a question for you all in the audience. How many of you drive like a car? Okay, a good amount of you. Now, getting a little bit more personal, how many of you have ran a red light before? A couple. I know you certainly have. It's my dad, by the way, but, okay, so a good amount of you. So your reason for doing so is probably, oh, I was running late for work, I wasn't watching, right? But without knowing any of that, what would your reaction be if someone else was running the red light? Not the same, right? Oh, they're careless. They don't know what they're doing. They drive just like my mom when she's late to her hair appointment. True story, by the way. So what I just told you is an example of something called self-serving bias, and that's the bias that our own selves are never in the wrong. We always blame our failures on an outlying factor. In my own situation, I blame my failure on the fact that, there it is, on the fact that they couldn't have two twins in the same role. It just wasn't fair to other kids. In that thought, what it all came down to was self-esteem. Self-esteem allows for confidence and security in your own abilities. The more of it you have, the less likely you are to blame your failures on something else to satisfy yourself, because you are already content. I wasn't confident with the outcome that I had received, and so I didn't take personal responsibility for maybe my own possible shortcomings that I didn't win, and instead, I blamed the system for being the reason that I didn't win. It matters how close your relationship with reality is. If your expectations in life are generally aligning with the outcome that you receive, you're less likely to disappoint yourself. So maybe it's a matter of changing those expectations to better suit what you need now. So now that you know you're guilty of self-serving bias, because you all just confirmed you're hypocrites when you drive, let me tell you how to change that. When we're in the face of anxiety, we don't ever think about more than one perspective, right? We're either focusing completely about ourselves and obsessing, or it's the same with another person, our opponent. We're obsessing completely over them. But remember that everyone is on the same playing field. My opponents in the election, they had a reason for wanting the same thing that I did. My sister and other competitors, they all wanted to make a positive impact in our community if they were elected. But don't forget to affirm yourself as well. You yourself have a reason for wanting that thing too. My reason to be elected was just as valid as theirs. So the first thing about a post-rejection mindset, which is being fair to yourself. I have a little story for you. So it was during the winter of 2020 when I was applying to various prep schools, just like St. Mark's. And, I was interviewing with these schools, writing essays. I was under immense pressure. Though I wasn't physically faced with my competition very much, I still very much felt its presence. People bring pressure, and COVID-19 was the first time in my life when I wasn't surrounded by people. In my time away from school, I rediscovered my love for reading, and I reread the Harry Potter books after so long. The way that J.K. Rowling had made her own fantasy world entirely, with hundreds of her own spells, foods, concept settings. Her visions were so clear that 8 record-breaking movies could be made, and theme parks for people to get to know what it's really like to live inside that world. I desperately wanted to go to Universal to experience it, but COVID was in the way. And so, I found a way to visit the places that I wanted to visit without leaving my room. This method is called shifting. To further explain, shifting your reality is a way to transport your conscience to another world or universe entirely. It normally happens when you're sleeping or under some sort of trance, kind of like lucid dreaming. And for those of you who don't know, lucid dreaming is being aware that you are dreaming. Yet, shifting is different in the way that it's completely real, where you can feel sensations and remember memories. I can see some of you looking at me like I'm crazy, and well, I was, but let's be real here, it was 2020, so did I really have anything better to do? So I I did crazy things when I was trying to shift, let's be honest. I drank gallons of water and I listened to the Harry Potter theme every single night before going to bed, hoping that it would get me closer to Hogwarts for some reason. After watching numerous tutorials on how to shift, there was one thing that the makers of those tutorials kept reiterating, and that was the fact that you have to reprogram your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is that part of your mind that guides all of your automatic motions. The things you can do, the things you don't have to think about. For example, I can walk up the stairs. I know I can do that, and I don't have to convince myself that I can do that every single time I go to do it. This part of your mind carries everything that you don't have to think about, right? But believe it or not, it's actually what makes learning new things harder. Why does my experience of reality shifting even matter to this talk? Well, this action of reprogramming your subconscious mind, is what I had to do if I wanted my troubles lifted. I had to start thinking differently about the way that other people saw me. And that changed my world entirely. We are in control of our own actions, and we have that control to change the way we think about things too, just as I did. All this time, I was trying to become a version of better that wasn't my own definition, which is why my efforts to become so weren't authentic. You're probably still wondering about that graph that I showed you earlier, comparing my sister's personality and my personality. Is she really better than me? And the answer to that question is no. She's not better than me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to come out like that. Sister watching, I'm sorry, but no, she's not better than me. Neither of us are better than each other. But the thing that set my sister apart from me was that she acted with confidence. She knew her worth, right? If I had known that at that point in my life, I would have received the same results as well. It's all a matter of confidence. There's one crucial perspective change that we must undergo, and here it is. Instead of asking, why them? Instead ask, why me? The last thing I did in my anxious situation was finally to transform the focus to myself. All this time I was asking, why was my sister chosen? Instead I asked, why was I chosen? Because I'm capable of failure. I'm capable of making changes. I'm capable of learning. When we dwell in our insecurity and ask the question of why our opponents are always receiving the positive outcome, what does that give us? We start naming all the things we could have done different, but most of the time, those things are negative. When we change the focus to ourselves, we find only positive things. Carly Sodus, activist and author, says in her own TEDxYouth talk, "We are afraid to be ourselves because we are afraid we are not good enough." If we were made to mimic one model human with the same looks and the same actions, then we would be made to be like that. But we aren't. So let's do what we were supposed to. This last bit to wrap up isn't really part of my two-part solution to a post-rejection mindset, but I just wanted to say this. Here's the secret. Get close. You can never really escape rejection or comparison. The only thing you can do is escape being negatively affected by them. You're going to find uncomfort wherever you go in life. It's inevitable. The one thing you can do is really think about how you handle it. Maybe now you'll stop and think before you pour water on a friend's bed. Thank you so much.